Welcome back. Thanks again for joining us for another episode as we continue studying through the Word of God together. We're glad you're with us as we are, jumping into a brand new book. We just finished the New Testament book of James, and we're going to jump back into the Old Testament again and spend the next couple of weeks working through the book of Judges, the Old Testament book of Judges. In context of history, it follows right after the book of Joshua. It's really the events of Joshua. Joshua has brought them into the land. He has defeated the land, and he has given the land. He's used the history he had to break down the inheritance of those who come back and whose land it belonged to. And so now their job is to go conquer that land. They have the land. They've been told what is theirs. But please remember, other people lived there. They had to go conquer this land. So really what we're going to see at the beginning is them conquering the land. And then we're going to work into this what we'll talk about is called the cycle of sin, this approximately 200-year cycle that Israel kept going through. Now, one of the things that's interesting, when you look at the idea of the book of Judges, you often see harsh or judgment. Honestly, it's not really where it's coming from. Every time Israel would find itself in captivity as a result of their sin, God would bring a judge. God would bring a leader, and that person was to lead them in military conflict to begin the process of freeing them from their captivity. That was the point of the judges. So really, when you look at the story of Judges, what you're seeing is a list of generally unlikely characters who God used in very specific and often miraculous ways to bring his people back out of bondage into another couple hundred years of peace and prosperity as they worship Jehovah. And that's what we're going to look at. We're going to look at a list of people over the next couple of weeks, that with opportunities. They were given an opportunity, and when they embraced that opportunity, they were used greatly. Probably one of the more popular stories out of this is the story of Gideon, a most unlikely man who took 300 people to defeat the enemy. So those are the type of things we're going to look at. But the first couple chapters of the book of Judges set us into some history, give us some context and history of what's going on. Now, I will tell you, when we do Old Testament passages, the one trickier part about it is to get the full story and the full context, to read more of the passage, which is going to be true again today. Generally, we won't cover all of it, but the account in history really covers all of chapter 1. So let's go ahead and jump into Judges chapter 1, beginning right at the beginning of the book. It says this in verse 1. After the death of Joshua, the people of Israel inquired of the Lord, who should go up first for us against the Canaanites to fight against them. In verse 2, the Lord said, Judah shall go up. Behold, I have given the land into his hand. Now, you will find it intriguing, again, something that is a bit of a cycle throughout the book of Judges. This book starts with Joshua passed away, which we'll get more detail on next chapter, but Joshua's passed away, and the people say, okay, go to the Lord? Who's going to take it up? But they seek out the Lord. They don't make their own decision. They seek out the Lord. So you see, they're starting off well, but it won't take long in this chapter before you find out that they really don't fully follow through with everything God has asked them to do. So we're going to go to verse 3. And Judah said to Simeon, his brother, come up with me into the territory allotted to me, that we may fight against the Canaanites, and I will likewise go with you into the territory allotted to you. So Simeon went with him. Then Judah went up, and the Lord gave the Canaanites and the Perizzites into their hand, and they defeated 10,000 of them at Bezek. Then they found Adoni-Bezek at Bezek, and they fought against him and defeated the Canaanites and the Perizzites. Adoni-Bezek fled, and they pursued him and caught him and cut off his thumbs and his big toes. And Adoni-Bezek said, 70 kings had their thumbs and big toes cut off, used to pick up scraps under my table. As I have done, so God has repaid me. And they brought him to Jerusalem, and he died there. Now, many look at that and say that's and one of the things you're going to find out anytime you study the Old Testament, especially when it comes to aspects of war and things of that nature, you say, man, sometimes it seems brutal. Please understand that a lot of what we're looking at is history. This was the culture of the day. These are things that are done. And so what the purpose is. So the two of the brothers they go fight with each other to possess the lands that they were given. God had promised, Judah, I'm going to put the land into your hand, which is important, as we'll look at here in just a moment. They go and they fight. They take on this king. Now, why the thumbs? Why the toes, big toes? Basically, you can't really swing a sword when you're missing a thumb, and you can't run when you're missing your big toes. The premise was, we're going to leave you alive, but we're going to leave you alive as a slave. We're not going to kill you. We're going to make you a slave, and you will never really be able to fight against us, because the importance of your thumbs and your toes, your big toes, in battle, in running, are massive. And so there's no way he could ever truly be a threat to them anymore, and he lived as a slave until he died. He mentioned he had done this to 70 plus people in his time. So this was really being redone back to him. And so they find that what happens is they came down to defeat. They defeated their enemies, and in that fact even were to be able to take the possession of kings. Quite normal in that type of warfare in old time history, in world history, and yes, in biblical history, which is simply world history. Verse 8. The men of Judah fought against Jerusalem and captured it, struck it with the edge of the sword, and set it on fire. Please remember, this wasn't the capital city at the moment. It was just the city. So they struck it on fire, usually a sign of judgment, a sign of purification, often the fire was. And so later it would become the capital city. Verse 9. And afterward, the men of Judah went down to fight against the Canaanites who lived in the hill country, in the Negeb, and in the lowland. And Judah went against the Canaanites who lived in Hebron. Now the neighbor Hebron was formerly Kiriath Arba, and they defeated Sheshai and Ahiman and Talmai. From there they went against the inhabitants of Debir. The name of Debir was formerly Kiriath Sephir. And Caleb said, he who attacks Kiriath Sephir and captures it, I will give him Achak my daughter for a wife. And Othniel, the son of Kenaz, Caleb's younger brother, captured it, and he gave him Achash, his daughter, for a wife. Now, again, this is relatively normal in these days. You watch any movie or program that goes back into this type of day, and there was war, there was often, if someone defeats, you get my daughter. A lot of times it was used to bring two nations together, and so they would become allies through marriage. Again, relatively normal, although I find it intriguing. I was reading a commentary this morning, and he made a point that Caleb was looking, giving a daughter was a normal practice in that day. He goes, so he wanted her to make sure that she was married to one of the greater of the men who would bring the defeat. And so let me find somebody willing to do this and really worthy of my daughter in that case, which is an interesting perspective to look at, especially when you see it's Othniel, who ended up taking her hand in marriage and also became one of the first judges of Israel. So it is intriguing that he did end up finding a great suitable partner, husband for his daughter, showing the value that he put, which is a different way than we would do it today, but still an intriguing approach to doing this. So let's go back after they get married, verse 14. When she came to her new husband, she urged him to ask her father for a field. And she dismounted from her donkey, and Caleb said to her, what do you want? She said to him, give me a blessing, since you have set me in the land of Negeb. Give me also springs of water. And Caleb gave her the upper springs and the lower springs. And the descendants of the Kenites, Moses' father-in-law, went up with the people of Judah from the city of the palms into the wilderness of Judah, which lies in Negeb near Arab. And they went and settled with the people. And Judah went with Simeon his brother, and they defeated the Canaanites who inhabited Zephath and devoted it to destruction. So the name of the city was called Hormah. Judah also captured Gaza with its territory, and Ashkelon with its territory, and Ekron with its territory. And the Lord was with Judah, and he took possession of the hill country, but he could not drive out the inhabitants of the plain because they had chariots of iron. And Hebron was given to Caleb and Moses, as Moses had said, and he drove out from it the three sons of Anak. But the people of Benjamin did not drive out the Jebusites who lived in Jerusalem. The Jebusites had lived with the people of Benjamin in Jerusalem to this day. Go back a second, we'll look at the fact that Judah, he could defeat the hill country, but could not defeat those in the valley. It says the Lord was with him, but then he couldn't defeat. It doesn't say that the Lord didn't allow him to defeat. Really, again, I was reading this morning, I found it intriguing. It's an interesting point that they were able to defeat all of the other people on the hill, but they looked down to the more well-fortified part of the city down in the valley, and they say, we can't do this. We can't defeat them. We can't defeat them because of the chariots. And simply, even with God with them, they look at the circumstances and said, there's no way we can do this. It's so important for us to learn that when God has given instructions, because he said, he told Judah will go, I will be with them, and I will give them the land. That includes the valley area. And yet he looked down and saw the chariots and said, there's no way we can do this. And so immediately you see this lack of trust that went in to God, and this ultimately becomes one of the long-term problems when they don't wipe out everybody, as we're going to read. Then we see another one where they don't wipe out this nation and ended up living with them and staying with them for up to this day, up to the time of the writing of this section. Verse 22, the house of Joseph also went up against Bethel, and the Lord was with them. And the house of Joseph scouted out Bethel. Now the name of the city formerly was Luz. And the spies saw a man coming out of the city. And they said to him, please show us the way to the city, and we will deal kindly with you. He goes, we're going to destroy the city anyway. So if you will show us how to get in there, we won't hurt you. We'll let your family go, which we see. And he showed them the way into the city, and they struck the city with the edge of the sword, but they let the man and all his family go, being kindly to them. And the men went to the land of the Hittites and built a city and called its name Luz, that it is named to this day. Now you remember, go back, you can see Caleb was given the promised land. Remember, he told Moses, I want this mountain, give me this mountain. And he gives it to Joseph. He ends up getting this, and so you begin to see God's fulfillment. He's got to go defeat it, which he does, taking out the brothers of basically the giants, brothers of Goliath, the descendants of Goliath, and he would defeat them in a great victory. So you do begin to see, again, God's promises and all of the events that were taking place. Remember, Caleb's the only one with Joshua who lived the 40 years journeying through the wilderness, because he was, we'd like to call him one of the two good of the 12 spies that went there. Then Joseph goes and defeats the city. Now, one of the things, Joseph's family, now one of the things I want us to see, we won't read the rest of it because the rest of it is repetitious and saying similarly the same thing, which is a lot of history. So let me just read the first section, then I'll explain what I'm going to. In verse 27, it says, Manasseh did not drive out the inhabitants of Bethshean and its villagers, nor Tanakh and its villages, or the inhabitants of Dor and its villages, or the inhabitants of Ilbium and its villages, or the inhabitants of Megiddo and its villages, for the Canaanites persisted in dwelling in that land. And you would read pretty much the rest of the chapter, and it's going to be different people who they defeated the land, but did not drive out the inhabitants, which is part of the command from God. God's command was that if you're going to do this, you need to drive out everyone. It didn't mean kill them all. It just means drive them out. Make them go find somewhere else. This is the land I've given you. You need to possess it. Okay, a couple things you can see. The principle we often get when we look to the Old Testament for ourselves is God will give us something, but it's our responsibility to take ownership to an extent of it. Our responsibility to make sure that we live in obedience. They were supposed to take everyone out so they could live in peace in this land, so that the beliefs and the worship and the gods of these people would not influence the Jewish people, which we will learn ultimately did happen. So they were told to get rid of them. And that's part of what we say. When God has given us command, he's given, our job is to not obey partially, our job is to obey completely. Then we can enjoy full blessing from God. But you're going to see the rest of this chapter, that's exactly what happened. Many people did not wipe them all, to send them all out of their area they had won, defeated. And you're going to see these people sticking around became a problem for the Jewish people through the rest of this book, and became kind of issues. And that's what happens when you don't live fully in complete obedience to Jesus. Even sometimes when all the commands do not seem to make a whole lot of sense, God has a reason for them. Well, I appreciate you joining us as we start off in this journey through the book of Judges. Again, the first two chapters, chapter 2 is kind of a bit of history, kind of setting the pattern, setting the stage for the different judges and why they were needed and what took place, and then we'll jump in. So we'll get a little more history in our next episode, and then we'll jump into the different judges. Many of them great stories that we remember. If you grew up in church, remember hearing these, first time hearing them, they're great truths. And it's a great principle how God can use anybody that's willing to be used. Again, I greatly appreciate the privilege you've given to me to be part of your day. Hope it's a help, and hope you stick with us as we work through this book together. Again, thanks for joining us. We look forward to seeing you again next time.